In normal banking, when you pull out $100, the system is totally locked down. The balance updates, and that's that. But in the wild, decentralized world of Ethereum, well, there's a ghost in the machine. It's a bug so simple it can fit on a single line of code, but it's powerful enough to have drained hundreds of millions of dollars from digital vaults. Okay, let's get into this.
And no, this isn't some theoretical number. This is the real price tag of just one absolutely catastrophic hack. $60 million gone, sucked right out of the very first decentralized autonomous organization, the DAO, all the way back in 2016. It was, no joke, one of the biggest digital heists in history, and it all came down to one tiny, little, misunderstood vulnerability.
This ghost, it has a name, the re-entrancy attack. And what's crazy is that it doesn't just smash through the front door. Oh no, it's way cleverer than that. It actually tricks a contract's own logic, turning a simple withdrawal into an infinite money glitch for the attacker. So today, we're going to run a full forensic analysis on exactly how this thing works. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we're going to look at the original blueprint, how things were supposed to work. Then, we'll reconstruct the heist itself, piece by piece. After that, we're going to zoom in on the weapon, the single line of code that made it all possible. And finally, we'll look at the security upgrades we use today to make sure this never happens again.
All right, to really understand the crime, you've got to start with how things were supposed to go. So let's imagine a really simple smart contract. We'll just call it the vault. Its job is super simple. Hold money and let people withdraw their money. That's it.
So on paper, the whole process looks flawless. When you want to make a withdrawal, the vault follows a clean, three-step plan. Step 1, it checks your balance. Do you have the money? Yes? Cool. Step 2, it sends you the Ether. And Step 3, it updates its own records to set your balance to 0. Check, send, update. Seems totally secure, right?
And that's the trap. The logic feels perfect, but in the world of smart contracts, that specific order, check, then send, then update, is basically a ticking time bomb. The vulnerability isn't in any one step, it's in the sequence itself, just hiding there in plain sight. Okay, let's move on to the heist itself. This is where we see how an attacker twists that seemingly safe logic into their own personal, unstoppable cash machine. This is where we finally meet that ghost in the machine. So what even is re-entrancy? Well, it's basically when a bad actor calls a function, but before that function can finish its job, the attacker's own code jumps in and calls the exact same function again. They literally re-enter the vault before the door has had a chance to close and lock. Here's a great way to think about it. Imagine a buggy ATM. You ask for $100, the machine spits out the cash, but, and this is the key part, before it can update your account to show you're $100 poor, you somehow manage to hit the dispense button again. The machine looks at your balance, which it still thinks is the original amount, and says, sure, here's another 100, and another, and another. That right there is a re-entrancy attack.
And this just lays it all out perfectly. On the left, you've got the normal, happy path. But look at the right. This is the attack. Step 1, the vault checks the balance. Looks good. Step 2, it starts to send the ETH. But right at that moment, the attacker's contract hijacks the process and calls the withdraw function again. The vault, which hasn't done Step 3 yet, checks the balance again and says, yep, you still have the funds, and sends more money. This loop just keeps going until the whole vault is empty. And that final update balance step, it never even gets a chance to run.
Every big hack has a weak point, a single vulnerability that gets exploited. In this case, it wasn't some complex virus or anything like that. It was just one single, standard-looking, and ultimately incredibly dangerous line of code. This right here is the weapon. In the Solidity programming language, this is a pretty normal way to send Ether. But it does something else, something absolutely critical. When it sends money to another contract, it also hands over control of the process. It's like it pauses and says, hey, you, external contract, you take the wheel for a second. And if that contract is malicious, well, it uses that moment of control to re-enter. So, the fatal flaw is this. The contract sends the money and gives away control before it updates its own books. It literally pays first and asks questions later. And by the time it gets control back to ask those questions and update the balance, it's way too late. The vault's already been emptied. The DAO hack was a brutal lesson for the entire crypto space, but it was also a massive turning point. After the dust settled from the heist, developers had to go right back to the drawing board to figure out how to build vaults that couldn't be bled dry like this.
And out of the ashes of that attack, two industry-standard ways to defend against it came about. The first is a really simple but powerful new way to structure your code, and the second is a special tool we call a re-entrancy guard.
The best and most robust defense is just to reorder the whole process. This is the gold standard now. It's called the checks, effects, interactions pattern. It's simple. First, you do all your checks. Then, and this is the game changer, you immediately apply the effects. You update your own internal state. You set the user's balance to 0 in your records. And only then, as the very final step, do you have the interaction. You make the external call to actually send the ether. Now, if an attacker tries to re-enter, the vault's records already say the balance is 0. The trick just doesn't work anymore.
The second defense is even more direct. A re-entrancy guard is basically a modifier you add to your code that acts like a digital deadbolt on a door. The second the withdraw function gets called, bam, a lock is thrown. If anyone, including a malicious contract, tries to call that function again before the first one is totally finished, they just find a locked door. The call fails. It's simple, but incredibly effective.
So, from the wreckage of the DAO hack, a much smarter, way more secure ecosystem started to grow. I mean, it was a painful, very public, and unbelievably expensive failure. But what did it all ultimately teach us? What's the big takeaway?
The lesson wasn't that we should be afraid of code. It was that we have to master its physics. In this world of unchangeable contracts and real money on the line, you have to account for every single possibility. The DAO hack was a $60 million masterclass that forced an entire generation of developers to build with a security-first mindset. And that led directly to the much more robust systems we have today. It proved once and for all why every single line of code matters.